Think about the last time you stood in the supermarket aisle, looking at a packet of sizzling breakfast sausages, thinking you were making a decent, protein-packed choice for your family. You check the front of the pack, see words like premium, traditional, or even skinless, and drop it into your trolley. But what if the very thing you are frying up on Sunday morning is less of a farmhouse tradition and more of a chemical recycling experiment? Today, we are cracking open what is actually hiding inside the breakfast sausages that millions of Australians eat every single weekend. We are talking about industrial fillers, hidden allergens, a massive excess of cheap salt used to mask subpar ingredients, and legal loopholes that allow companies to hide what they are putting in your mouth. You will find out exactly how corporate greed has hollowed out an Aussie staple. I will show you the independent data that exposes the most popular brands on our shelves, and we will decode the hidden language on the back of the packet that the big supermarkets hope you never read. Make sure you stay until the very end, because the absolute most shocking entry on this list belongs to a brand you almost certainly have sitting in your freezer right now, and I will also give you a 2-minute home test that exposes the truth using nothing but a frying pan dot. Before we start naming the big players you buy from Woolworths and Coles, we need to understand the basic mechanics of how a modern commercial sausage is put together. A real, high-quality sausage requires exactly 4 things: meat, salt, spices, and water. That is it. When you grind meat and mix it with the right amount of salt, a magical biochemical reaction happens. The salt dissolves a specific protein called myosin. This dissolved protein forms a natural, sticky matrix that traps fat and water, creating a juicy, firm texture when cooked. It is a time-tested process that butchers have used for centuries, relying entirely on the physical properties of real food to create structure and flavor. But if you are a massive industrial food manufacturer producing millions of links a week, real food is expensive and margins are thin. That is where the engineering tricks come in. The primary goal of modern industrial sausage production is to replace expensive lean meat with the cheapest possible inputs: water, fat, and starch fillers. The problem is that if you just add water and flour to meat, you get a soggy, unappealing mush that separates in the pan. To force these incompatible elements to stick together, the industry relies on binders and emulsifiers, turning what should be a simple meat product into a highly processed chemical emulsion. The most common weapon of choice here is sodium diphosphate or other mineral phosphates. These compounds serve a very specific corporate purpose. They chemically force the meat fibers to open up far wider than they naturally would, allowing the mixture to hold on to massive amounts of added water. When you buy cheap sausages, you are literally paying a premium price per kilo for tap water that has been chemically locked into the meat paste. To fill out the volume further, manufacturers dump in large quantities of wheat flour, tapioca starch, or hydrolyzed vegetable protein, reducing the actual meat content to a fraction of the total weight. Once you have diluted the meat with water and starch, you lose all natural flavor, so the final trick is to blast the mixture with excessive sodium, sugar, and industrial flavor enhancers. They use terms like yeast extract or natural flavors, which sound innocent enough but are frequently used as clean label workarounds to pack the product with naturally occurring monosodium glutamate without having to print the letters MSG on the front. What you end up with is an ultra-processed food matrix designed for shelf life and maximum corporate profit, leaving the consumer with a mouthful of cheap additives, hidden starches, and heavily masked ingredients disguised as a hearty breakfast. Let us kick off with the actual countdown of the names dominating the Australian cold shelves, starting from the ones that look like a calculated health swap and moving down to the absolute heavyweights of the supermarket layout. If you are already itching to check your own pantry or fridge right now, hit that subscribe button because the data only gets rougher from here. Number 7 on our radar is Steggles turkey sausages. This is the exact product that stands in the supermarket aisle looking like the responsible, calorie-conscious choice for anyone trying to ditch traditional pork. The Steggles name has spent decades operating as a trusted household staple across Australia, which means that goodwill transfers straight into your morning routine. The logic behind grabbing it makes complete sense on paper because turkey is naturally lower in saturated fat. But here is the massive industrial trade-off that occurs once you look past the bright green branding on the front of the pack. Saturated fat is what carries flavor and gives a sausage its traditional juicy texture. When a massive manufacturer strips that fat out to hit a marketing metric, they have to compensate for the lost palatability elsewhere in the recipe matrix. In reduced fat industrial meat processing, that compensation almost always arrives in the form of pure sodium. Independent analysis of industrial turkey sausages reveals sodium levels that routinely match or even exceed standard pork alternatives. The fat content on the nutritional panel drops down, but the salt line quietly climbs to keep the product tasting like actual food. The average shopper who switched for cardio health rarely looks at the sodium column because the marketing imagery never directed their eyes there. A quick glance at the fine print also reveals a chemical cocktail of mineral salt stabilizers, thickeners, and the beautifully vague legal catch-all natural flavors. Under the Food Standards Australia-New Zealand Code, that single phrase permits an array of compound flavor concentrates to live inside the casing without individual ingredient disclosure. You made the switch to turkey because you were trying to pay close attention to your health, but the packaging layout was engineered so that just paying attention to the front label would feel like enough. Number 6 is Macro Whole Foods Market organic pork sausages, sold prominently through the massive network of Woolworths supermarkets. This is the clean, green packaged option you make a specific trip to the health aisle for, purely because you have already done your homework and consciously rejected the conventional commercial brands. The brand has built its entire market identity around the premium consumer who actively scrutinizes ingredient labels. That is a deliberate premium positioning strategy, which is exactly why the regulatory loopholes in the formulation deserve a cold, hard look. The pack proudly highlights the absence of artificial preservatives, a claim that is completely accurate in a strict, legalistic sense. No synthetic sodium nitrite has been added to the mixing vat. However, what has been added to achieve the necessary preservation and characteristic pink color is celery extract or celery powder. Celery is a plant that naturally absorbs massive amounts of environmental nitrates from the soil. When this concentrated celery powder is mixed into the sausage meat, naturally occurring bacteria convert those plant-derived nitrates directly into nitrites. The resulting compound that this biological process produces is chemically identical to the synthetic sodium nitrite you were trying to avoid in the first place. Consumer advocacy group Choice has repeatedly pointed out how food labeling standards allow products using plant-derived nitrate sources to bypass the scary chemical numbers on the back, despite delivering equivalent levels of nitrites to the final food matrix. The required disclosure about naturally occurring nitrates is printed on the back, but the regulations do not specify the font size relative to the bold claims on the front. Then you look at the corporate mechanics operating behind the scenes. The brand built to give you an escape from industrial agriculture is a private label mechanism owned entirely by Woolworths Group, one of the two massive supermarket corporations that control over 60% of the entire Australian grocery sector. The product designed to make you feel like you are supporting a small-scale alternative keeps your money flowing straight into the pocket of the biggest corporate duopoly in the nation. It is a brilliant trust architecture built around language that major consumer groups argue is fundamentally misleading. Number 5 lands us at Primo Smoked Kransky, a fixture of the premium deli case that looks like a genuine upgrade from the basic supermarket option. The high-gloss packaging and slight price premium imply a product made with genuine care and traditional European methodology, but that premium implication is doing a heavy amount of heavy lifting. In late 2023, the industrial reality caught up with the imagery when multiple batches of ready-to-eat smoked sausages across the Australian supply chain had to be urgently pulled from shelves due to foreign matter contamination, specifically the presence of sharp bone fragments. A hard bone shard hidden inside a dense, smoked sausage is a serious physical hazard that can chip teeth, puncture soft oral tissue, or cause throat damage on the way down. What makes these incidents highly problematic is the way consumers interact with a product like a smoked Kransky. It looks completely sealed, solid, and finished. People routinely slice it directly into quick weeknight pasta dishes, skillet bakes, or serve it to children without mentally flagging it as a potential choking or laceration risk. When structural foreign objects show up inside an ultra-processed meat product, the damage is not just physical, it completely breaks the consumer's foundational assumption that a premium, fully cooked item should at least be mechanically safe to chew. Compounding this, independent supermarket audits conducted well into 2026 revealed that despite widespread consumer pushback against industrial preservatives like mineral salts 451 and 452, these moisture-locking chemicals remain heavily embedded in the ingredient list. The factory floor prioritizes water retention and shelf life extension over everything else. You are paying a premium price per kilogram for a product that relies on industrial phosphates to bind excess water into the meat paste, which is definitely not what most shoppers think they are investing in when they walk past the budget options. Number 4 takes us to Don's Skinless Footy Franks, a brand that has effectively defined the taste of institutional catering, school canteens, and quick family dinners for generations of Australian consumers. This is the product you find at every weekend sports club barbecue and office morning tea. In a major enforcement action documented by Australian food safety authorities, thousands of kilograms of fully cooked small goods from this category have previously faced sweeping retail recalls due to critical manufacturing breakdowns leading to metal fragment contamination from processing machinery. Metal contamination is a severe manufacturing failure that turns a quick convenience food into an emergency room hazard. The real insult here is not just the physical danger, it is that consumers paid their hard-earned money specifically for speed, convenience, and peace of mind, only to get dragged into an industrial breakdown. That is the emotional core of the brand. You are not just purchasing processed meat, you are buying 10 easier minutes in the kitchen during a chaotic morning or a rushed school night. When that purchase turns out to contain mechanical debris, it stops feeling like a simple food defect and starts feeling like a complete betrayal of the product promise. There is also a broader corporate pattern worth naming directly. The parent company behind the brand is a multi-billion-dollar global protein conglomerate that operates massive automated processing facilities. The current retail formula relies heavily on thickeners like mineral salt 450, antioxidant 316, and sodium nitrite 250 to keep the highly fragmented meat slurry stable and pink over weeks of transport. It receives the maximum classification for industrial food intervention, meaning the raw ingredients have been subjected to so many physical and chemical stages that the original agricultural source is unrecognizable. The corporate public relations team manages the public image, but the automated factory floor dictates the actual quality of what lands on your plate. Number 3 is Hans American-style hot dogs and breakfast rounds, carrying a decades-old legacy of regional small goods production that many consumers still associate with local heritage. The packaging leverages nostalgic imagery of traditional family butcher shops and honest food, building a deep level of generational trust. But the corporate reality tells a completely different story. Hans was swept up in a massive corporate acquisition by the global meat giant JBS, the single largest protein processor on the planet. When a multinational conglomerate takes control of a heritage brand, the people making decisions about the recipe change instantly. The old-school branding stays on the plastic film, but the formula priorities shift to maximize output efficiency across a massive corporate ecosystem. Independent product reviews and laboratory ingredient checks conducted recently showed the formula loaded with sodium tripolyphosphate and mechanically separated meat paste. Mechanically separated meat is not a standard cut of pork or beef trim. It is produced by taking the stripped animal carcasses, bones, and cartilage and forcing them through a high-pressure industrial sieve. What squeezes through the mesh is a fine, pink substance that is legally classified as meat and added to the mixing bowl to lower production costs. Furthermore, the chemical analysis reveals the ongoing inclusion of synthetic preservatives that have been restricted or placed under severe scrutiny by international food safety agencies due to potential long-term metabolic impacts. For an everyday shopper choosing this brand because the heritage logo signals traditional quality sourcing, discovering that the product is a vehicle for high-pressure bone paste and synthetic binders is a massive wake-up call. The family name on the front belongs to history, but the ingredient list belongs entirely to modern corporate accounting. Number 2 is Aldi Jindura Station pork sausages, by volume one of the absolute most purchased meat products in the entire country. More Australian households are throwing these onto a hot plate right now than almost any other product on our list, due to the aggressive budget pricing. That staggering scale is precisely why the hidden mechanics of the product deserve intense scrutiny. The product has been the subject of formal consumer complaints regarding physical contamination, including pieces of hard industrial plastic finding their way into the retail packs. We are not having a subtle nutritional debate about protein ratios here. We are talking about a direct physical hazard in a high-volume budget item designed for fast, distracted family consumption. This is the exact food you cook in bulk at a kid's birthday party or a community event without inspecting every single bite with a magnifying glass. That casual style of eating only works because people assume the food is safe on autopilot. Once a budget staple is linked to manufacturing debris, the entire value proposition collapses. You are no longer thinking about saving a few dollars at the checkout. You are wondering what else survived the industrial mincing process. Beyond the physical risks, the back of the packet reveals an absolute textbook example of cost-optimized food engineering. It is packed with sodium metabisulfite, a preservative known to trigger severe respiratory reactions in asthmatics, alongside a heavy dose of hydrolyzed maize starch to pad out the weight. The best-selling budget sausage in the country carries a clear paper trail of contamination complaints and maximum chemical assistance, which is exactly what you are signing up for if you only look at the price tag. Number 1 is Primo Pork Sausage Mince, the classic clear plastic tube you find nestled in the meat bunker at every local supermarket. This is the exact product you buy to press into custom patties on a Sunday morning or roll into homemade sausage rolls for a party. The brand owns the commercial sausage identity in Australia more completely than any other competitor, which is a massive commercial reality. And this is exactly where the corporate cost-cutting lands the hardest. This industrial mince tube relies heavily on preservative 223 sodium metabisulfite, an allergen that must be legally declared because of its documented capacity to cause adverse reactions in sensitive individuals. It also contains sodium phosphates to force the raw meat paste to absorb maximum added water before it is sealed into the plastic tube, alongside generic natural flavors that mask the true profile of the low-cost trim components. The corporate matrix creates a brilliant public illusion of standard kitchen ingredients, but the actual shelf documentation shows a formula designed entirely for industrial longevity and weight maximization. The distance between the traditional butcher shop image on the marketing material and the actual chemical document on the reverse side is massive. The package was intentionally designed to prevent you from making that connection, but now the laboratory data is out, and you know exactly what is running behind the plastic wrap. Right, here comes the part that made watching this far worth it. You do not have to abandon the weekend barbecue or survive on dry toast just because the industrial food complex decided to turn breakfast into a chemistry project. There are real, family-owned operations and ethically minded companies producing small goods the exact way they were intended to be made. They rely on the natural chemistry of real meat and basic spices rather than automated chemical injections. The switch from the toxic avoid list to these clean options represents an immediate upgrade in flavor, digestion, and long-term metabolic health. Our first recommended option, sitting perfectly at the mainstream, highly accessible end of the spectrum, is Cleaver's organic pork sausages. If the whole conversation about hidden celery powder loops and chemical sulfites left you feeling completely hopeless, Cleaver's is the direct answer you can find during your normal midweek grocery run. This is not a niche product hidden away in a specialty health commune. It is stocked right in the standard meat cabinets of Woolworths, Coles, and independent IGA stores across the country. The ingredient breakdown is refreshingly short. Certified organic pork, water, organic rice flour, sea salt, and a clean blend of organic herbs and spices. There are no mineral salt stabilizers, no synthetic preservative 223, and absolutely no hidden celery extracts designed to cheat the system. They are also certified carbon neutral and completely gluten-free. Independent laboratory test results consistently confirm that Cleaver's maintains an exceptionally high meat percentage without resorting to structural water-binding chemicals. When you throw these onto a medium-hot skillet, the sensory experience is immediately distinct from the industrial alternatives. They do not undergo a massive volume collapse, and they do not fill the base of your pan with a puddle of grey, chemically trapped water. Instead, the natural fat renders out slowly, crisping the natural hog casing to a deep caramelized golden brown. The texture is firm and pleasantly coarse, presenting the distinct chew of real pork rather than the smooth, rubbery bite of high-pressure paste. The only real downside here is the price floor. At around $18 per kilogram, they are visibly more expensive than the budget supermarket lines. But when you break it down to a per-serve cost, you are paying roughly an extra $1.50 per breakfast to entirely avoid a chemical cocktail of respiratory irritants and hidden binding starches. It is the ultimate low-friction swap for the average family household looking for a clean upgrade. Moving up to our second option, we have Gamze Smokehouse Free-Range Pork Sausages, a brand heavily stocked throughout Harris Farm markets and high-end independent grocers. This is a family-owned operation based in Northeast Victoria that has turned chemical-free small goods production into an absolute science. Their core operational philosophy is fundamentally simple. Completely eliminate all synthetic food additives, mineral salts, and chemical preservatives from the factory floor. They use strictly free-range pork sourced directly from small, ethical Australian farms, where the animals are raised outdoors without hormones or routine antibiotics. While other brands use the word natural as a clever marketing shield, Gamze backs it up with an ingredient statement that contains nothing but free-range pork, water, salt, cracked black pepper, and natural spices. Expert culinary reviews frequently highlight Gamze as a gold standard for clean processing because they refuse to use celery powder workarounds, opting instead to rely purely on traditional temperature control and rapid vacuum sealing to guarantee product safety. The sensory profile is incredibly robust, delivering a deep, authentic pork flavor backed by genuine whole spices rather than lab-synthesized extracts. Because there are zero starches or chemical binders added to pad the volume, the sausages have a slightly shorter shelf life in the fridge, meaning you need to cook them within a few days of purchase or drop them straight into the freezer. It is the ideal option for culinary purists who want absolute certainty that no industrial shortcuts were taken. Finally, at the absolute premium end of the Australian market, we find Hagen's Organics pork and leek sausages. Available through their brick-and-mortar storefronts, select artisanal markets, and their dedicated online ordering network, Hagen's represents the pinnacle of transparent, trace-forward butchery. This second-generation family business works exclusively with local, biodynamic, and certified organic producers. Their formulation process goes completely beyond what standard supermarket regulations require. There are absolutely no fillers, no grain additives, and no compliance loopholes. The sausage consists entirely of premium pork shoulder and belly trim, fresh, locally grown leeks, sea salt, and organic spices packed into a natural hog casing. Independent food safety audits consistently rate Hagen's at the top of the spectrum for purity because their production floor physically does not contain industrial chemicals or starches. The taste is a complete revelation compared to supermarket alternatives. It is rich, deeply savory, and boasts an incredibly clean texture that leaves no greasy, chemical coating on the roof of your mouth. The obvious downside is restricted availability and a premium cost that sits closer to $30 a kilo, making it a specialty purchase rather than an impulse buy. However, if you are looking for the absolute cleanest possible paper trail from a local farm to your morning plate, this is the gold standard choice for your kitchen. To protect your family from industrial food engineering next time you walk into Woolworths or Coles, you need a quick set of ground rules for reading the back of the packet. First, always flip the tray over and inspect the actual meat percentage statement, because anything under 85% meat means you are actively paying a premium price for tap water and starches. Second, treat mineral salts 450, 451, and 452 as absolute red flags, as these are industrial moisture-locking phosphates used solely to force low-grade meat to absorb weight-padding water. Third, check the fine print for preservative 223 or sodium metabisulfite, which is a notorious respiratory irritant that companies add to extend shelf life far beyond what is natural for fresh meat. Fourth, be incredibly wary of the phrase celery extract or celery powder on products claiming to have no added nitrates, as this is a legal loophole that delivers identical levels of nitrites through a plant source. Fifth, look for explicit green flag labels like certified organic or 100% free range, as these regulatory classifications impose strict limits on factory additives and industrial binding agents. Finally, if the list of ingredients requires a degree in chemistry to read, leave it on the cold shelf and move on to a brand that puts real food inside the casing. The core reality of the modern supermarket layout is that it was designed to prioritize corporate profit margins and logistics over human biology. Massive global food conglomerates rely on chemical emulsifiers, water-trapping binders, and artificial flavor enhancers to turn cheap animal trim into highly uniform products that last for weeks in a shipping container. To stop being a victim of this system, you need to completely stop buying food based on the emotional stories told on the front of the packaging and start treating the ingredient panel on the back as the only source of truth. The moment you shift your mindset from price convenience to chemical transparency, you strip the big supermarket duopoly of their control over your health. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time digging into the reality of what goes into your shopping trolley each week. If this breakdown opened your eyes, please share it with one friend or family member, because you definitely know someone who is still throwing cheap commercial sausage tubes into their cart on autopilot. Let me know down in the comment section right now, which of these small goods brands is sitting in your fridge or freezer at this very moment. Make sure to stick around for our upcoming investigation, where we expose the hidden industrial thickeners lurking inside everyday Australian dairy products. Keep your eyes sharp, look past the branding, and take back control of your kitchen.